Welcome to the Geek podcast, where you ask and we answer. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
Answers!
Today we're talking about a bunch of things. It's a Q&A episode where we've been prompting you for questions, and we try to do this once a year around Thanksgiving-ish. So it's time. There's a lot, so I'm not going to dawdle here. We got to get into it. But
there are a lot, y'all. Thank you.
Before we do, I got to say, thank you to everybody who sent in questions. I didn't do as good of a job this year keeping the questions with the people, so I'm just going to thank everyone up front. Our podcaster at large, Rob, who was previously on the Comic Box, thank you. You sent in a bunch. Ryan Fitzgerald, Shadow Master, Ken Murray, Matt, Data Error, Ninja Boy 333, Troidal Power, Capsule J, and anyone else that I may have grabbed your question and forgot to grab your name. I apologize, but thank you very much. Okay, let's get into our rapid fire questions, because we have a bunch of those up front because we got a lot of questions this year. So I think I'm going to read, I'm going to give my answer, and then you're going to go. We're going to make this work because we have a bunch to get through.
Let's do this. It's like speed dating, except for nerds.
Yes. Okay, that's the episode title now. What little-known comic should get a live-action show on one of those streaming services? I think it should be Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, because those are comics that focus on her perspective in high school, and I think it would be amazing to see as a show.
Oh, I still need to read those. Mine would be Rising Stars by J. Michael Straczynski. It's my all-time favorite comic, and the story would be fantastic on a premium network. If one generation of superheroes existed, never before, never after.
Sweet.
It'd be such a good show.
That would be a good show. What company, product, or property, etc. would you like to see as its own streaming service? Would you just choose Star Wars all the time? And hey, honestly, yes, you nailed it. You got it in one. I would choose Star Wars for sure. But as it is, I'm perfectly happy with them wrapping that into the whole Disney streaming service.
Yeah, I mean, Disney is kind of the one that does it for me. If I could pick one, it would be like generally old cartoons I had watched when I was a kid. So generally the Disney afternoon stuff, but other than that, it was like the 80s cartoon extravaganza where I could just watch all the stuff from my childhood, like My Little Pony, Brave Star, Rainbow Bright, Wuzzles, things like that all the time.
Nice. What's the coolest lightsaber? I think that I would probably pick something from the old canon expanded universe, just because there's so many there to choose from. But I was trying to narrow it down. So if I had to pick something that's currently in canon with the new canon, I would have to pick Ahsoka's. I love that her lightsabers became white and gray after she left the Jedi Order and became more of a neutral gray Force user. And I also love that she dual wields, and the lightsabers are two different lengths. So it's kind of a unique thing in the universe. It's not just a normal lightsaber.
And I always like the hilt on Mace Windu's, and the hilt from Obi-Wan's in episode 1 and 2. That Ewan McGregor getting to pick out his lightsaber was one of the best stories I've heard. They had this case and opened it up, so I've always just loved that one because he nerded out really hard about getting it. And I have the replica of the Mace Windu one, and I mean, it sounds super nerdy, but it just feels good to hold. So that's my favorite one.
That's sweet. If you could own one screen-used movie prop, what would it be? For me, it would be Rey's lightsaber from The Force Awakens. I think that'd be so cool.
Oh, mine, Willy Wonka suit that Gene Wilder wore.
That's a good one.
Love it. I would so own that thing.
If you could visit one movie set, past or present, what would it be? I'm going to go back to The Force Awakens. I think they faced a huge challenge bringing back Star Wars, and they just nailed it. That movie is what it needed to be, and that is an almost insurmountable challenge that they overcame. I want to be a fly on the wall for that entire filmmaking process.
Oh, that's a good one. For me, Jurassic Park. I just want to see all of those dinosaurs because they had so much animatronic they had so many animatronics that I just want to see all of those dinosaurs.
That's a good one. You're writing Star Wars Episode 9. Go. I would make them realize that the Jedi and the Sith are both extremist organizations, so they end up getting rid of both the Jedi Order and the Sith, which frees up the universe to tackle stories that aren't simply black and white and can get into things that aren't just good guy versus bad guy.
Okay, so for me, I would say that Rey would go around collecting all of those Force-sensitive children that it showed in The Last Jedi to keep them from joining up with the Knights of Ren, and while she's doing that, she's studying the old Jedi tomes. The Resistance is making a final push against the First Order, and they manage to find that there are good people still within that organization, and they start working toward peace instead of a coup or an attack, and it would end with Kylo Ren being kind of a second teacher to the kids that Rey is gathering up, but it wouldn't be a Jedi Order. It would be like a new Force Order where both sides could be balanced, which would also tie into the First Order and the Resistance actually working together in a balance too.
Interesting.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, nice. You're writing the next Star Wars story. Go. I'm going to do something similar. I would make the setting about gray force users, but I would put it in the unknown regions and try something really different because Star Wars universe is so expansive and they just keep coming back to this black and white good versus evil, empire versus rebellion thing. They need to get away from it because the universe could be so much more than that.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know what it would actually be, what the story would be, but I'd probably go back in time to look at the Old Republic stuff and try to develop a realistic foundation as to why the core world's culture progressed to the point where it was able to be toppled like it was thousands of years later. Like, I want to go back and look at the politics of it, kind of like he wanted to initially with Dune and failed.
Ooh, interesting. You're recreating the TGIF lineup with modern remakes. Go. No. I refuse. I'm not going to do this. It was of its time, and any attempt to replicate it is doomed.
I kind of think they're doing this already, like with Sabrina and Fuller House. But like, if I had my druthers, it would be something like Fuller House, Punky Brewster, and Night Court. It was like, I love those shows.
Wow. Okay. You get to make a single new or remake season of any cartoon. I would make a remake. I really had to think about this one, but I think I would remake the Pokemon TV show from the ground up with an adult audience in mind. I would love to see what Pokemon looks like from the perspective of adults instead of kids.
Maybe we'll get that with Detective Pikachu.
I doubt it.
Hope. For me, if I had a new season, it would be Gravity Falls, and if I had a remake, it would be Darkwing Duck.
Those are both good. Who would win in a lightsaber fight between the two of us? I say that this is a good question. I say that you would probably win unless I had time to plan beforehand, because then I would probably do something underhanded that completely goes around the lightsaber duel, and then I would kill you in a different way.
Oh, yeah. And if it were legit to the death, then I would cheat so hard there's no way to tell. Like, if we're both going to be that underhanded, it would be like that would be a fight for... That would be like Han Solo fighting Mal Reynolds. I'm like, that would be the worst. Like, there would be no lightsabers. We would just be like elaborate plans to kill each other. Like, they would never get ignited if we both knew that we would have to die.
Yep,
yeah.
I agree. Who would win in a rap battle between you two? I feel like we would somehow both lose in this instance. Unless you're holding onto a skill set and hiding it that I do not know about, I just think we would both lose.
I still think you would actually win because I'm absolutely terrible at like freestyle rapping. I'm not good at coming up with that kind of poetry on and rhyming and things making sense. I can't write songs that make any kind of sense on the fly. So I think you might actually win on that.
Who would win a jump rope competition between you two? I think you would. I'm pretty sure.
Well, my response on this is LOL, okay? Like, why?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You're just like more physically fit and like into working out and exercising than I am. I feel like you're more serious about it and you're probably just better like in shape to do it.
That's fair. I would like to do that. When we get to finally meet each other in person, we have to have a jump rope competition.
Okay. We can do that. We can make that happen. Which IP needs a new cereal? So, first of all, I don't think any IP needs a cereal, but I would love to see them, I'm just saying, I would love to see them try something that's totally like M or R rated and just see what happens if they turn it into a cereal. So something maybe like Game of Thrones? Like, yeah, I think I'm going with Game of Thrones.
Man, that would be hilarious. Mine would be Kingdom Hearts. Like, think of all the marshmallow shapes you could get from that.
Oh, there's so many. That's okay. That's a good pull too. Have you guys had any luck finding anime or anime-esque media that you guys actually enjoyed this year? So for me, The Dragon Prince is really the main thing I found this year. And then I've actually rewatched Your Name, which is just a movie. It's an anime movie, but I've rewatched that a few times this year, even though I found it last year. I really like that. That's probably my single favorite like anime thing ever.
I've still got to watch that. It's still on my list. This year it's been, I started the new Voltron I talked about last week, and it's anime-ish based on an old anime. And I watched a lot of Sword Art Online that I really liked, and I watched a bit of Big Hero Academia, which was cool, but it wasn't really my thing. So I'm opening up to it more.
Okay, that's good. How do you know if you're a geek or just pretending to be one? This was kind of like, this was a deep question, and I almost wrote out like a whole thing, and then I think I came back to a more simple answer. So I think that everyone is a geek at something or for something. It's more about finding like what you geek out about and less about actually worrying about the label of geek and what it kind of used to mean and what it would stereotypically mean. I think like every single person on the planet is a geek for something or another thing.
Yeah, and for me, I don't ever like labeling something or someone as a fake geek or someone pretending to be a geek. It's like you said, I mean, somebody's going to geek out about something, and it's like saying someone is pretending to be an athlete. I mean, sure, there are a lot of people who dedicate themselves to it. I mean, there are professional players, all this, but if you get out there and sweat, you're an athlete. And it's the same for geeks. You can get hardcore into whatever it is, and you want to talk about it with people and buy all the stuff for it and join message boards for it. I mean, it doesn't matter if that's outside of your normal spheres of interest. You are geeking out about that.
Well said. Yep. Have you guys ever looked into a lit RPG book subgenre? And if so, which books? Any opinions on these books or the subgenre in general? So yeah, for me, I've looked into it and I tried a couple, but none of them have clicked yet, and I've kind of bounced off of everyone. I don't even remember which ones I've tried because I bounce off them pretty fast, but I'm open to it and I'm going to keep my eye out going forward. If I ever do run into one that hooks me, I'll definitely talk about it on the podcast.
I refuse to, partly because for the last 5 years, I have had a couple of novels and series planned out that before this was a thing and I hadn't written them. And before lit RPG was even a term, and I called it gamerpunk, and I still think that's better, and I never wrote it, and then all of this stuff has come out, become popular, and now I just be another Me Too, so I'm being kind of childish about it, and y'all ain't gonna ever hear my stories. And I won't read it either, because I'm like, no, like, I'm straight up being childish about it.
Wow, nope. I actually like your term a lot better. That's way better than lit RPG.
Yeah, it's way better. Yeah. And there was nothing called, and then I didn't write it, and it's like, all right, fine, I could have made $1 million, or like
you dragged your feet.
300.
What books did you guys geek out to as kids? The question asker just finished reading Animorphs and realized that they've been, between that and Ender's Game, they were a sci-fi geek way earlier in life than they realized. So for me, it was a lot of Star Wars. I've read like almost all of the old expanded universe novels, and if you guys know how many that is, it's a lot. It's a lot of books. And I started when I was a kid. They had like kid subsections of it, or like kid series within that, and that's kind of where I got started, and then I just never stopped doing that. So also just a lot of other fantasy and sci-fi, and no specific series that stands out in my mind.
For me, it was A Wrinkle in Time. Like, that entire series I loved. Like, I would go search. I could not find a Wind Through the Door or A Swiftly Tilting Planet in any of the local bookstores, and it was before the internet. So I actually geeked out about these books because I could not find them and I wanted to see them, and bookstores couldn't order them for me for some reason. And so I really wanted them. I read a lot of the old Star Wars books, and then collecting the Goosebumps books. Those were pretty much the main ones for me. And I just found out like last weekend that there's a second quadrilogy for Wrinkle in Time books, and I didn't know it until like last weekend, and I'm going to read all of them soon.
Wow. Okay. That wraps up the rapid fire section. So we have some non-rapid fire questions in here too. How do I find time to get through so much stuff while having kids? I wrote a lot. I'm going to try to get through this really quick. So the first thing is, don't be afraid to put things down as soon as you stop enjoying them. Enjoying might not mean like you're having fun, but you're getting something out of them, right? As long as you're getting something out of it, as soon as you stop getting something out of it, don't be afraid to put it down and move on to the next thing. I also purposefully cut back on a bunch of things that in my life that I just don't think were like adding meaningfully to my life. So I don't really watch a lot of TV. A lot of people have it as like a constant thing they do every night. And sometimes I just go months between watching anything at all that could be considered a TV show. Part of that is because I worked in TV too. So I've had my fill of it as like a career, but it's also just not something that's like my default ever. I also don't do a lot of social media. I'm cut Facebook out of my life completely a few years ago, and I've kind of avoided Instagram on purpose. And, I've been trying to wean myself off Twitter more and more. I'm never going to go away from Twitter entirely, but like more in the last few months, I'm just trying to like pull back how much I spend there in terms of my time. And I'm also trying to cut back on Reddit, since that's a hole you can lose yourself down easily. Again, not one that I ever want to cut out completely, but just kind of cutting back and just staying more, everything in moderation. And, I haven't cut out any of those out of my life completely except Facebook, but I've cut all of them way back, and it frees up some time for other things. I also try to respect my own free time a lot more because I have so much less of it than I used to. Between my job getting more intense as I make career progress and having kids and being married, there are weeks where I barely have any free time at all. So I have to find more and more ways to optimize my free time, which sounds counterintuitive that you're going to spend like productive time optimizing free time, but it made a big difference once I started approaching it that way. I used to sleep less to make it work, but I'm trying harder to change sleep habits and actually like respect the sleep that I need to get. So after having kids, you kind of learn how you can get by on almost no sleep. But like when they were babies and you get by on almost nothing. I kind of figured out finally the right amount for me is probably on a weeknight is somewhere between like 6.5 to 7 hours. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at getting it. I probably get somewhere between 5 and 6 most nights, but I know that like if I'm feeling off, I got to go to bed like slightly earlier and actually try to get that 7 hours of sleep because it makes a big difference. Also, I put a bunch of processes in place to help me optimize my free time. Again, there's a whole episode that we did about this, and it's probably like 1.5 2 years old at this point. If you want an hour and a half of this, go listen to that. But some things that I put in place, like I sample a lot of things with the knowledge that I probably won't buy into it and give it a ton of time, but I'm just kind of like doing a cursory glance at it. I keep lists of things to do, and that helps me a lot. So I have different lists for different activities. So like reading is one, watching shows and movies is a different one, video games is another one, things like that. I keep them all in sync on Wunderlist, so I always have access to them, and I can always just update them if I have a thought off the top of my head. And I try to only have one game, one book, and sometimes like one movie or TV show going at a time. I don't do like more than one at a time in general. I mean, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, it helps me focus and it helps me like make progress in them to finish instead of having a million things that are just sitting around unfinished, even though I started them. And then I found that there's a lot of time in my daily routine where I can have like one headphone in while doing other stuff. So whether that's like at work at my desk or around the house, just doing housework and chores or making food for the kids or whatever, picking up the house every night, I can listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks, which helps. And then overall, if you take anything away from this tangent of mine, seriously, just don't be afraid to like abandon activities in your free time as soon as you stop getting something out of them. That's the biggest thing that can make a difference. When I started giving myself permission to do that, because I used to feel like I really needed to finish things, and that's not true. That's like a self-imposed thing, but I feel like a lot of people run into that. Give yourself permission to not do that. So it changed how much I enjoy my free time and how much I get done and get through in my free time. So that's the biggest thing. BJ just made a note in here that the episode, if you do want to listen to kind of the whole system that I have laid out and why I do what I do, it's season 1, episode 7. It's called the backlog episode, which is good. Okay.
Actually, it's called Tackling Your Video Game Backlogs.
Oh, thank you.
But it's the 7th episode of the show ever. So season 1, episode 7.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Another question directed at me. I'm curious about Void's 3 headphone system. Please explain. So I have headphones for work. So these are headphones I use every day, right? It's headphones for work. I have a couple sets around the house, so I use around the house, and then those would be my 3. So the headphones for work, and then I have like a set of headphones upstairs, a set of headphones downstairs around the house. And then I have different headphones for recording the podcast and different headphones for editing and mixing the podcast. So really, I have like 5 or 6 different ones stashed around, but this is why What?
Wait, so you have different headphones for editing the podcast than the ones you're wearing right now when we record it?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
I did not know that. That is awesome. What's the difference? When you finish this one, what's the difference in your recording and editing headphones?
When I record, so the ones that I record with are more like what I would think of as like a studio headphone that like go over the ear, but they also isolate the noise better to keep it away from the microphone. And it's more about like getting it done while producing better audio. And when I listen to the edit and I do the mix, I listen on headphones that like would be more typically worn as like earbuds, like things that people are generally out and about.
Oh.
Because I like to listen to it in the format that other people are going to be listening to it. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Okay. It was actually the opposite of what I expected. I expected you listening to me being a lot more like, oh, who cares? And then when you're going through the editing process, that it would be need more specialized like features that
Nope, other way
shows
around.
what I know.
Yeah, I learned that one back when I was doing video editing. The more that you can get, like, when you're editing something, the closer you can be to what the end user is going to see, the better off you're going to be. So that's kind of what I aim for when I'm doing audio editing. Okay, back to questions for both of us. What are some green flags for you that signal right away that you want to stick with a game, show, book, movie, etc., whatever? So I have a couple different ones in here. One is like when I'm not sure how I feel about something, it's a good sign that it doesn't mean that I want to necessarily dig in all the way, but if I'm not sure how I feel about it, it's a good sign that I should spend more time with it at least. So that's a green flag for me.
Yeah.
Another one is like if I'm super excited to talk about something with other people, like other friends that are also into that thing, that's a really good sign that I should invest some time into it. And then like a big general one is that if I can be engaged with something and not be tempted to check my phone, like that's probably the biggest green flag for me. If I'm really fully engrossed in something that I'm not even thinking about checking my phone, it's a test that very few pieces of entertainment actually pass, but when they do, it's a fantastic sign for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way on that one. Like if I don't want to do something else while I'm watching it, even a little, then that means that I'm going to stick with it for the long haul. Otherwise, like if the characters or the plot really makes me want to know more about the world in like the first episode or the first chapter, where I really start thinking about the history or the relationships, that's a really good green flag for me. And like in games, if I enjoy the tutorial section, like because generally they're so boring and so limited that they're like, oh, I just want to get this over with. If I have a good time, like the Spider-Man PS4 game, for instance, it's like if I'm having fun and they make me giggle like flying around as Spider-Man did, it's like I'm going to stick with this game. It's like this is a good game if you can make instructional play fun. And then if I leave, even if I don't think I like it, if I think about it later and I want to go back and be like, actually, did I give that a fair shot? Kind of like I did with Voltron. Or if I start thinking about it, like, actually, that's a good indication that I need to go back and stick with it because it had something that made me want to invest in it subconsciously.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, if you're still kind of like thinking about it, like there's something else that might be there.
Yeah.
Okay, general thoughts on social media, and if you had to cut back one platform, what would it be? So for me, the second part is easier because, like I said, I cut Facebook out completely years ago, even though I used to use it all the time in college and then early years after college. And I purposefully avoided like Instagram, except for work purposes. The only real social media that I still interact with regularly is Twitter, and I've been kind of like cutting that back. I'm not going to get rid of it, but just kind of cutting back usage. And then I leave push notifications on there because I love to get into conversations randomly on Twitter with people that I follow or in the network or interested in the podcast. Like I always leave those open so I can jump into conversations, even if I'm not regularly checking the timeline in the way that I used to. And then
Same here.
General thoughts. I think like social media just in general, it kind of takes too much up of our time, like for everybody, just too much time and energy. We should all probably cut back, but also we're all guilty of it. Like, you know, I'm not saying I'm better than that. Like I need to do that too, but I think everyone probably should. The only thing that I'm really increased my usage on over time is Slack, because I'm in a couple Slacks that are amazing and I just love the conversations on there, and it's private. It's, you know, a walled garden where I can just kind of be myself and not feel like I'm performing or like in public in a way, and that really appeals to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way in general that you do. Like it takes up way too much time. I've put on the screen time on my phone so that I can see how much I'm using that kind of thing, and it's just too much. I mean, I don't use Facebook much. I use the pages for work, but in terms of using it personally, I try to keep it to a minimum because I don't actually like talking to people that I know. And I know that sounds strange, but it's like I tend to talk to them through Messenger or direct means. If it's text or something like that, I talk to people I generally know like that. I don't generally scroll through and see what's going on with people. I use my wife for that. She tells me what she sees on there. But it's like I'm on there so that she can tag me in things and people can tag me and stuff and show me stuff. Kind of the same way I use Twitter. It's like I keep notifications on so that I can talk with people when there's something going on without missing it. But Twitter is about it for me. I sometimes throw something on Instagram, but I always want to try and I don't get it. Like it's one of those where I understand it and I can appreciate what you do on there, but I'm not good at it. Like keeping up with the practice of it, it's just not for me. But Twitter, I still love. I still really love Twitter, and but I'm just trying not to spend as much time mindlessly scrolling. I want to take my time and specifically use that time on Twitter, for instance. I'll see something and have a conversation, or, okay, I've got half an hour. You know what? I just want to see what people are up to on Twitter rather than, I don't have anything better to do. Here's Twitter, and scroll like that. I want it to be a mindful choice because we too often use it as those mindless time wasters, and it becomes an actual waste at that point instead of something that we legitimately enjoy.
Yeah, well said. No, I agree. Cool. I tried to get into the Clone Wars cartoon, but I couldn't stick with it. The Jar Jar episode was horrible.
Yes, they were. It was a 3-parter.
Yeah,
why?
I don't know. Is there some other way for me to try to get into the extended universe stuff if I generally don't care about Star Wars? Or should I just assume it's not for me beyond the movies? So this is a really good question. I know this one came from Rob. Just because I remember the question.
Yeah.
I would maybe try, so if you're really trying, like if you really want to give it a full go, I would maybe try Star Wars video games at some point, but it really seems like you've done your due diligence already, and it might just be time to let go of it beyond the mainline movies. Like, that, maybe that's all for you, and that's totally fine. But I actually think that the Star Wars universe is an amazing universe for video games to be set in. It's just unfortunately been really underused in the last few years. Like Knights of the Old Republic is still one of the best examples of them using it in a new and creative way, but that feels really dated at this point. I would not tell you to go play that game. I don't even know like which one I would tell you to play. Just as they finally get back around to making Star Wars video games that aren't just like Battlefront, if there's an actual Star Wars game with a story behind it, then you might want to kind of like keep an eye out for that type of thing. But beyond that, it sounds like you tried, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. Don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of video games, maybe The Force Unleashed.
Maybe.
It was a
maybe.
It was a PS3 era game. Play the first one before you play the second one, because the second one is worse than the first one, just not bad. You can get it super cheap. Like, I loved that game. I haven't gone back and played it in a while, but it was the first one that made me feel like I was playing Star Wars more than playing a cool game that was Star Wars. Knights of the Old Republic is fantastic, but you're right, it's very dated. I feel the same way about Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64. Like, great memories and great at what it is as an artifact, maybe not the best for what talking about Star Wars itself to get you into it. In terms of TV, if you've tried Rebels, maybe that one would work for you. If Clone Wars doesn't, I don't know if Rebels will. I haven't seen the new one called Resistance, so I can't say anything about it at all. Maybe some of the better books, like Ahsoka. The Ahsoka book is great. It's a good book that, were it not Star Wars and were just a regular sci-fi book, it would have been just as good. And then maybe the original Zahn trilogy, the first Star Wars books that were really written and published, that started with Heir to the Empire. If you can treat those like they were originally written, like they were the sequels to the original trilogy, that this was what happened in the years following, that may be something that can get you into them, because I think they're legitimately good. Of course, they're early 90s sci-fi, they're Star Wars novels. I mean, they're not literature or anything, but the Heir to the Empire trilogy may be your best bet into books, if you ask me.
I would maybe say even Lost Stars. Lost Stars is like my favorite Star Wars book at this point, and it's in the new canon, and it's just really, really well done, and it ties into the movies, not directly, but it's definitely a link throughout to all of the movies, even though like the main characters of the book are not from the movies, which I think actually benefits it a lot. So if you've never tried a Star Wars book, that's another one that you could go down that path.
That's true. I haven't read it. I've started the audiobook of it, and it's really well performed. It was one that I ended up like switching phones. Something happened that I didn't have it on my phone anymore. Is the reason I never finished it. And since I know this is from Rob, but just in general, if you're thinking about that, looking at more of the expanded stuff, look at the comics. We've talked about this before, but they're really good, especially the ones they have right now. The Darth Vader comics are great. That's the one I would suggest starting with. If you like anything about about the Rebels, then the Rebels TV show, then the Kanan comic was really good. I know that Void has said the Dr. Aphra comic, which is a spinoff of Darth Vader, is good because she's a great character. That would be my suggestions. And if not, I mean, if you tried those, like he said, you've done your due diligence. You know what you don't like. Maybe you don't like anything beyond the movies. That's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Okay. What subscription services do we currently use? I thought this was a good question.
Yeah.
So for me, it is Netflix, a few Patreons, if you consider those subscriptions. And honestly, that's kind of it. I was trying to think what else. I guess I have a couple others like Hulu, but that's really more for my wife. Like I don't really use it most of the time. And then I have a bunch of software licenses that I need to renew every year, but that's not, I don't think that's what this question's asking. So I'm not going to count that either. One of the things,
you got it. We subscribe to Snagit. Come on, an Adobe Creative Cloud.
Yeah, stuff like that. But I mean, I liberally cancel subscriptions when I stop using them, which is one of the things that frees me up to try new subscriptions or dip back into old ones whenever I feel the urge to, because I don't have a ton of them that are hanging over me. Really, it's just like Netflix and a couple Patreons. So, you know, like I go back to Marvel Unlimited whenever I feel like, oh, I need to catch up on comics. I'll pick up a month of that. Or like Elder Scrolls Online that I did earlier this year, or kind of any MMO that's out there. I want to try Crunchyroll at some point. Like I'm not going to hesitate to do that because I'm not weighed down by all the subscriptions that I have, which I think is something that works really well for me.
And for us, I'm the same way about subscriptions like that. For games and things like that, I'll toss $10 or $15 at a game when I know I'm going to play it for a while. If I want to, like ESO, like you said, I've done that. I threw $10 at the PS4 version to get the Warden because I knew I was going to play it for a while. That's fine because I'm not, buying brand new games at that point, being weighed down by other things. But in general, I've got Netflix for the shows that I want to binge on and watch some of the movies. We keep Hulu because there are a few TV shows that are current that we keep up with during the fall, especially because we don't have a major cable package or just the basic one to get the internet. We have an Amazon Prime subscription that we keep, and we actually use Prime Video a lot. Well, we use the video part of it a lot. That was we specifically watch Prime Video a lot instead with some of the originals and the stuff, movies and TV that's on Prime. Because everybody uses it for their for the shipping.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just like a cost of living for me. Like we would not function as a household unit without Amazon Prime. It's critical, but it's for the shipping. Like the Amazon Video is just a thing that sometimes I use, but it's not why I have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of our main ones. We check to see if there are any new TV shows or whatever that we want on there. I think we also have right now like a Beachbody On Demand subscription because Jennifer was doing the 21-day fix, and I really need to do the P90X one again. Like it's a really good service. I like it. When PlayStation decides they want to take my money and don't block my account from giving them money, I keep a PS Plus membership for cloud saves more than anything in the free monthly games. There's a Black Friday deal that I'm actually going to grab from GameStop that's a $39 card for a year, which is incredibly cheap for it. So that'll get us through the next year really cheap. And right now I think I have a Discord Nitro subscription because I'm really vain and wanted a specific username since we have the Discord and everything for the network here. And right now I've got Marvel Unlimited and I've been using it a lot, but it comes and goes depending on how far I am in the subscriptions or in the comics themselves, at what point I run out of comics to read that I'm interested in. I don't think there are any more for me. If they are, I can't think of it.
That makes sense, though. We're kind of in the same boat. You have a couple more than me, but we're not that far off. We don't have a ton of them.
Not really.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had any discussions, topic ideas, or creative projects that you wanted to do but might not be best suited for the podcast format? If so, how do you decide if it's something is good for a podcast format or what media format would be best suited for that creative project? I like this question a lot, so I decided that this would be the last one because I thought we could talk about it. This could become an episode for us.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I think I'm going to speak for both of us here a little bit up front because you and I talk about this kind of thing all the time. I think both of us have a ton of creative project ideas, but we only have limited time and energy, and that we can like put into something consistently on a weekly basis on top of our 40 or more hour a week jobs. We try to sneak in some topics that we care about into this podcast that aren't necessarily like directly like geeky stuff related. Things like working styles, freelancing, work in general. Honestly, something along those lines about like work and the ways we work and everything that goes along with that, that could become its own podcast if we had the time and energy. I know it could, because like just ideas off the top of our heads, those always come up super easily.
And I had somebody I live stream for work, and one of the viewers actually said when they saw how passionate I got one day about talking about content creation, they're like, you need to have your own content creation, because I was talking about all this different stuff, and I was like, man, if I had the time to do a YouTube channel on specifically on content creation, that would be so much fun.
Yeah,
like my teaching background would be so useful in doing that.
Yep. I mean, I also suspect that if we had more time and energy, we could do a weekly Star Wars podcast. It would just take some more upfront work on the topics, like compared to what this show takes right now. And then not to mention like all of the other back burner creative projects that I know both of us have that are separate from each other, like not doing together. But the main thing I think that, and you and I have talked about this, I don't know how much we talked about it on air, but we've both discovered over the past like 10-ish years of making things creatively, like it's been that long that you and I have both been making things on the internet, which is crazy at this point.
Crazy thinking about that. Yeah.
But like in the last 10-ish years, I know, right? I wrote that in here and I was like, wow.
Oh my God, it was 2008 when I started blogging.
I told you.
Holy.
Like, one of the things that we've learned, and take this and learn from it because it took us a long time to get here.
A long time.
If you can't devote time to something weekly, every single week, it's just going to die before it goes anywhere that you actually want it to go. And with that knowledge in mind, we're both super hesitant to start something that we don't have time to finish. I think, and again, I'm speaking for both of us, so jump in here when I'm done talking. But like that's one of those things that I think both of us have just learned over time.
And it's absolutely true that you hear a lot in terms of blogging and online creation and side hustles and creative projects, that content is everything, and it's not. You can, as if you are consistent, consistency is everything. My boss right now told me that one of the things that narrowed me down into the finalists for my position was seeing the 10 years of creation and being able to keep up with it consistently, because it's hard to do. I have a lot of failed projects out there, started podcasts that I wanted to do, different blogs, all these fantastic ideas, but I can't do because I've let fail, and I feel bad about because I should have known better, because I did know better and ignored the experience that I had. At least weekly, maybe even every month, whatever schedule. I wouldn't even say weekly. If you have a regular schedule for it that you set out at the beginning, make sure that you can keep that. Whatever that is,
I would
keep
even
it up
say,
regularly.
Like once a month is not enough. Like it seems like it might be, but it's not. I mean, if you really stretch it, maybe every other week, like maybe you could make it work. But like weekly has been the key for everything that I've actually done and been consistent with. Like that, the number one thing that makes it keep going is that the consistency week after week. And then as far as like how do we know the correct format for something? Honestly, like I think both of us just kind of consume a lot of media and we use our best judgment. And then for me personally, I've worked in media and marketing for my entire career, so that probably helps things.
Yeah, that probably helps a lot in terms of that. On my side on all of this, like I have tons of creative ideas, and one of them that's really been bouncing around in my head lately is have you ever seen the show Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee?
Yeah.
It's like a Jerry Seinfeld thing. Like I want to do that, but with like geeks doing like talking about really heavy, important things while gaming together, like Overwatch or Fallout 76 or something. It's like fragging people, but at the same time talking about really serious adult issues. And it's like, I want to do that, but I've been bouncing it around in my head, but it would take a huge commitment to do something like that, which is the whole thing. Like you said, don't have time to really set up something regular to do that. And for me, keeping my sanity is far more important than having another project and being productive, which wasn't always the case. When I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, a big part of that is hypomania, which makes me go ultra productive and focus in on lots of different things, like get lots of different projects going at the same time. And then I'm working so hard to make sure that they're all going as well as they can, that I burn out on them. They all fail, then I get depressed. And so I'm trying very hard to be mindful of that now. And I'm doing my best to stick to, like, this is the podcast that I do, and a couple other things now and then. Like, I want to be able to expand what I do on this podcast, because I'm still feeling like I still feel like there's more that we can do on this and that I would like to look into, but I'm always afraid to take on anything else because of that. So it's like that. It's a balancing act for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of different reasons on everybody's part too. I mean, I know there are a lot that we could do on different platforms if we all had the time. And, like you said, for the format, like yours was working in media for your whole career. Some things was like trial and error. Like, there are some things we've tried and we've been like, oh, this will be a great episode, we can do this as a podcast. We get 10 minutes in, it's like, oh, I guess we didn't have anything to say, that was not a good idea. But this would have been a great idea to do as a YouTube video where we could have had all of this. It's like, sometimes it's just trial and error, and sometimes you have to cut stuff, and that this is a podcast and this is a particular tone of podcast. We try to talk to a particular audience, and sometimes we've had to completely scratch ideas that may be either too controversial or too political for the tone of what we're trying to do. It may be the right format in terms of the podcast, but it might be even better on, say, YouTube as a video, or maybe even a discussion on Twitter to get going with people, because a podcast talking at people like this would not go over well based on those topics.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of those things too where, like, when we talk about, we didn't mean to make a podcast network, we kind of stumbled into it, it's turning more into we didn't mean to make like a media network, as we have other people that are interested in like blogging or streaming or YouTubing, and like I would love to kind of pull some more of that in and feature them,
Right.
And one of the things with like our loosely affiliated network is like we just like to like boost each other and talk about each other and occasionally jump on each other's podcasts, but that's kind of the core of what we do, is right, bringing geeks together with other geeks. And I would love to do that for more formats. It just takes time that I don't have. But if we do have other people in the network that are interested in it, I would love to like start featuring that more as we go forward.
Yeah, that would be great. Like, we're every year we try to do something different. Like, this is our third year of doing this. We're ending season 3 soon. In the beginning of 2019, we'll start season 4, which sounds absolutely insane for me to say out loud. And we always try to do something a little different, like I said. And we may add like something like featuring different kinds of channels and content, but we need to know what you guys like about that, and just how much extra time stuff like that would take, submissions, I don't know. But there's all these ideas like that's in our head and in my head that I want to do, but have to figure out which ones are realistic.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's a ton of things that, like, if I had time, like I could make a killer video series. Like, I have 2 or 3 of them that, like, if I had the time to devote, I know what I would want them to be. And the problem is that I did it professionally, so the quality that I'm okay with releasing is way too high to do casually, and I don't have the time to devote to it that I need to. I also know that like streaming's not for me. Like, I'm not going to do that. I would love to have like streamers on the network. I actually have a couple in mind that we might be talking to here pretty soon. Again, we're kind of thinking about next year in season 4, but I'm not going to be one of them. Like, that's just not my strong suit. You guys don't see the prep that goes into the show, but my half of the show notes are very prepared because I think about something for a whole week. And by the time we get to podcast time, I'm ready to talk about it because I've thought it through in my head. But off the cuff, I'm not quite the same. I mean, it's not that I can't talk, but it's definitely a different tone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like off the cuff. That's really where I shine. And I would like to do like live stream talk shows and things like that. Because I mean, that's what I do on Friday afternoons for work, is I sit in front of a webcam and talk to people about WordPress. And I mean, that's something that I actually found out, speaking of this and that, when I was on my retreat in Spain, the CEO and design lead were talking about, like, sometimes they'll sit, because they're two of the few people that actually are in the main office, and they're like, I didn't think that we would be able to find somebody who could talk about WordPress by themselves for an hour, but it's like, yep, BJ can. And it's like, and I can. Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't want to say I'm good at it, but I'm capable of, that I would love to be able to add more to the network or something like that as a creative project, add a geekery stream or whatever it is, even if it's not gaming, but these different platforms that right now are just out of the equation because of time and, like for me, making sure I keep everything in a nice controlled compartment. But time mainly, and effort among other things.
Well, and I would say another thing that really helps is that we do this together. This is something that you and I both make, and we kind of, there's no overt pressure to the other person, like, you have to be here, because that's not how we are as people or as friends. But it's like, just knowing that, like, we're both going to show up at approximately the same time and place every week. Sometimes it changes, but to like do this and like create this thing together, that goes such a long way towards making the consistency part of it, which I think is huge.
Yeah, it does. It's so much easier to do something consistently with someone who's relying on you and on whom you can rely than it is doing it solo. Much, much easier, because I tend to personally just stop doing things and I don't feel like doing them anymore unless there's something on the line. And it's like, I don't want to not do this. Like, I enjoy this. I stop doing things I want to do and that I enjoy just because I don't feel like it sometimes. So having someone there to keep me accountable is the main thing for me and being consistent.
Yeah, that helps. And just like I said, setting aside the time every week, that's the biggest piece for me that I've found over time that makes a huge difference.
Yep, that there's a time we do this. It's not like, oh, when can we do it this week? It's like, oh, I don't have any time this week. It's like, nope, at this time we do this. Yeah. It's like, that is what we do. We've done for years. It's like, well, we've changed times, but it's like, this is the time we can do. It's
exactly.
Like, okay, let's do that.
Cool. That's all the questions and all the answers, apparently, for this week. I'm not going to go into the whole spiel about the network. You guys know all that. But I am going to ask for reviews because it's something we barely ever do. So this is why I don't do it very often, because we actually need you to do it when we do ask. So if you've been listening all year and you've noticed that we never ask for reviews, I saved it for now and probably again around our Christmas episodes. Please leave us a review on any platform at all. I mean, iTunes helps the most, but anything that you're listening to this in, or Spotify or Google Play or Overcast, if you're like me, go on and leave a review if your app or platform lets you at all. Do you have any other things to say about reviews?
They help more than people who are not content creators may know. Reviews really are one of the things that people look at. Whether you personally do or not is one thing, and whether you believe what people say about them. You don't even have to say anything, by the way. A lot of times you can just leave a star review or something like that. But that helps in the algorithms, it helps people find us, and it helps people know which shows are actually worth giving their time to, because when you have a certain number of people who have actually taken the time to do that, it shows that there is something there. So we're hoping that since you're listening to this, that you feel well enough to do that for us. So it really does help, almost more than anything else that you could do is that weighs in. Tell a friend, send a review.
Yeah, please do. And, if you want to, I always encourage, if you have a friend's device handy, just pick it up, go into iTunes, leave us a review on their account too. It's not going to hurt anything.
That's true. That's true. It's not.
It's if you left a review a year or two ago and you can't leave another one because you already did, now, if you have a significant other's phone nearby, just grab that and help us out. Anyway, we'll probably ask for reviews one more time, maybe two, before the end of the year, and then we'll be quiet about it again for another year, because that's kind of the way we roll. That's it for this week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we have great discussions on Slack and Discord too. So go to discord.geek2geekcast.com or slack.geek2geekcast.com to hang out with us. And remember, we are part of a network like we had talked about, so you can see all of the shows and everything that may be upcoming when it gets on there at geek2geekcast.com.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as @ProfessorBeej, that's Beej with 2 E's, and I blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
I guess I did have answers.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes.
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.